Okay, so welcome to this episode of Coffee and Antiracism. And yeah, I'm Rebecca Hemmings. I'm the CEO of Strawberry Words Training Consultancy, a small company based in Birmingham. And we educate people around race and help organizations to become anti-racist. Now, why am I creating this particular episode? I hadn't planned to do it. But such is the need. So at the time of creating this, just a few days ago, a young girl was viciously and violently attacked outside her school in Ashford, Kent. And whilst this podcast episode isn't about that particular incident, I find it too distressing to go into any great detail. What I will say, I want to cover how I felt watching it, and I know this will be mirrored by many other Black people who watched that video. But more importantly, I just want to speak to schools and what the urgency is. I want to speak about the urgency of having to deal with an increase in racist incidents. We see it. We get calls on a regular basis, emails on a regular basis, or we get parents saying, can you do something, or recommendations from parents who know there's something going on in the school or and so on. And it's just really quite frightening what's happening. It's frightening not only because of the incidents that are taking place, but because of the lack of urgency to do anything about it. And I know what that is. And so I'm going to speak about what I believe are some of the reasons behind why schools, not all schools, but a lot, are dragging their feet with this. I'm just going to say it as I feel it. This is Coffee and Antiracism. It's just a space for me to speak, right? We're just going to say it as it is. So first of all, what I want to say is vicarious racism is real, man. It's real. It's real. So this is feeling, seeing an incident of racism and happen to somebody else, and you probably don't know that person, but you feel it as though that person was someone that you knew. And that's what happened when I saw that video of that girl. Oh my gosh, you feel a visceral pain. And if you're not from that particular background, so in this instance, if you're not Black, it's very hard to relate to that because you don't have that shared history, the shared challenges, struggles, seeing these types of images over and over again, having that fear that it could be this could have happened to a relative. I mean, I saw that girl and it's hard for me to even say the words. I saw my daughter. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So the pain I feel for that girl's mother, I can't even begin to express in words. I mean, I had a whole day of filming planned yesterday. And it's a good thing it was just filming and I wasn't planning to deliver any workshops or training because I physically just couldn't do it. My brain couldn't wrap my head around what I'd seen. And I advise people, don't watch those videos. I say that normally. But I saw all these messages popping up or all these posts on Twitter popping up about, the head teacher and what happened after this racist incident. And I just thought, let me see what happened. What did the head teacher do? Because nobody was really explaining that. And I thought, okay, I'll just see this as a normal school fight because, that happens in school from time to time, right? Oh my gosh, no, I was so wrong. Anyway, as I said, I'm not going to go into the video. But what this is like it's an accumulative effect, because these incidents are on the rise and we're hearing them more and more in the news. Just last year, there was a boy who broke his two fingers, if not lost his two fingers in Wales when he was trying to escape. Two boys or a couple of boys or boys that were being racist towards him. Hello, like why are we like? Okay, I'm trying. As I do, when I deliver training, it has to be very measured. But this is me being very real and just telling you that I'm telling you how I feel. Okay. But I'm still trying to keep it educational because that's the point of these, right? So what I want to say is this. Racism in schools is on the rise, okay? So in 2021, the Guardian newspaper did they found some evidence basically finding out, I'm struggling to find the words. Basically, they found that 60,000 racist incidents had taken place in the 5 years beforehand, and that was in 2021. And a lot of that was attributed to Brexit and what had happened with Brexit. Since then, or, at the beginning of that, we had the pandemic. We now have a cost of living crisis, a rising levels in mental health difficulties amongst young people. And so these will also exacerbate the problem, okay? Racism in school is one of the biggest barriers to success for ethnic minority students. Hear that? Racism in school, and it's not just your direct forms of racism, and that's the biggest message that I would like communicated. It's not just about those fights. Thank goodness, that level of violence is not that common, but it's more your microaggressions, your unconscious biases. We need to address these. Okay, there's exclusions. Black Caribbean children are 3 times more likely to be excluded from schools. And evidence states it's because they're dealt with differently. So I'm not going to make this a long podcast episode today. I really am not. I just want to say, this is my call to action for teachers. Be willing to accept you have unconscious bias. We all, as human beings, have unconscious bias. Why did you pick the shoes that you're wearing today to wear? Because you like them. You like them over another pair of shoes, right? That's a bias. We all have conscious and unconscious bias. I teach this all the time. And one of the biggest biases I find that people have is the blind spot bias, which basically states that I don't have bias. I don't have unconscious bias. We all do. And again, if you're, I'm not doing a session now where I can prove this to you, but if you take the implicit association test by Harvard University, I say this all the time, you will have your biases revealed to you, okay? And if after doing that, you're still questioning, whether you have unconscious bias or not, ask yourself, what would it mean if you did have unconscious bias? Like, what is the fear? What would it mean if you discovered that you actually do have unconscious bias? Why might you be afraid of that answer? Okay? Because we do all have it. Okay? And also, just related to that, another bias is homophily. We tend to like people who are like us. It's just natural. It's how we've managed to survive as humans. We like people who are like us, but that can't exist in the vacuum. Okay, so even me, most of my friends look like me. I didn't consciously necessarily go out to get friends who look like me, but I've just been attracted, or I've gravitated to that type of people. Most people are like that. And I'm not saying it's just to do with race, okay? It could be to do with your interests, it could be to do with your age or your intellectual level or whatever it might be. But there's something about our friends that have attracted us to them, okay? That's a bias. And it's often an unconscious one when it comes to our friends. So if that exists, this idea that we really like people who are like us, that can't exist in a vacuum. So there's going to be some people who we don't like as much. I know that's uncomfortable, okay? And I'm not saying that you have to have big open conversations about this, because it feels horrible. It feels horrible to have these revealed. Because our unconscious biases often go in opposition to the very values that we hold dear to us, okay? So when you find out you have one, it can be quite shocking, okay? But listen to that, because you can do something when you listen to that, when you acknowledge the fact that you have unconscious bias. But when you don't, you can continue to cause harm. So I want you to entertain the idea that racism, this is another point now, entertain the idea that racism might be happening on a wider scale than you think within schools. We're talking about a school context today, right? Just entertain. You might not believe it. You might not see anything. Everything might be totally rosy in your school. But just for 1 minute, I ask you to think, what if there were some elements of racism happening within the school that I just wasn't seeing, that I'm just not seeing? What would that mean? What might you hear or see or be more open to if you just ask that question? Because often what I see is, again, we're brought into a school, we're told about this apparently isolated incident, yet still, when we do the training, again, we find teachers who don't believe they have unconscious bias. Okay, but when they hear about microaggressions, fully admit, oh my gosh, I say that, I do that. This will all be contributing to the racism that students and staff, ethnic minority students and staff, will be facing. We cannot afford to ignore this, because what these unconscious biases and microaggressions do is that they reinforce the idea that you are different, you are not part of the norm, you don't belong, you are the other. And so can you imagine as a child what that does to you emotionally and mentally if you're constantly being subconsciously told that you do not belong? Well, I can tell you, already it's contributing to the mental health decline of young people. It's changing them on a cellular level. Their epigenetics, they're changing. It's contributing to future illnesses for them. It's contributing to their emotional the decline in their emotional well-being. And often it's going unaddressed because teachers won't, not always, not all, but some will not be open to the idea that they have unconscious bias towards ethnic minorities. So my call to action also is to get educated, to be educated. Read the book. Start with, there's loads. Nice Racism there's two books actually by Robin DiAngelo. Nice Racism. I think it's great because I think for a lot of middle class white people in this country, they will say they're not racist or that they don't participate in that system, but yet still will subject ethnic minorities to racial microaggressions over and over again. So nice Racism talks about how we're polite and we don't talk about certain things to do with the race, and because of that, it's participating in that system. She also has the book White Fragility, and Robin DiAngelo, just because I think it helps sometimes to say this, is a white woman. So definitely check those books out. Of course, you can hire us, but that's not, you don't even have to hire us. I'm saying wherever you get the education, get the training, and make sure that it's a high quality level of training. Okay. So that it's not just, I'm just going to say this, that don't feel as though when you're doing diversity, equity and inclusion training, that because you've done that for like all the protected characteristics, that it's done and dusted. When we're talking about race, there's a whole area that needs to be explored, and it's uncomfortable and it takes time. So often when doing a DEI training session or day or something, they're important and they're necessary. But if you really want to deal with race, you need an anti-racism training session or sessions or courses, okay? Finally, my call to action is to create a racial safeguarding policy. I can't tell you enough about the urgency of this, because children face racism on a regular basis, whether they know it or not. They are being harmed. They are being emotionally subjected to attacks, verbal attacks, subconscious attacks, again, being told that you do not belong, and that has a damaging effect. So by creating a racial safeguarding policy, you can have rules, regulations, guidance in place as to what constitutes microaggressions. So when somebody says, if you're unsure of an example of one, and somebody says, oh, I don't see colour, we can counteract that and say, well, actually, it's important to see colour, because then we see the problems, we see the challenges, we see the nuances in experiences, and we don't just assume that everybody has the same experience as one group of people. Okay, so that's it. That's what I want to say. we're just in very serious times, and I just felt that I needed to make this episode right now. Just because I see so much evidence of people just kind of not listening, not thinking it's that bad. We all paid attention during the pandemic when the George Floyd video surfaced, because we were all at home, and it caused people to think. And what's been good as a result of that is that there are more conversations in the workplace about racism. We're not in the pandemic like we were, a few years ago, but I'm telling you, racism is on the rise, and I want people to, even if they've not seen that video now, please do not look at the video, particularly if you're black. But I want you to be aware of its existence and just the hatred. Be aware of the hatred that exists, the anti-black racism. Look that up. Oh, there's so much to talk about. But as always, we're here to help. So we have our online training, anti-racism training, that you can check out, Time to Talk About Race. It's CPD accredited. So any organizations, and we have organizations on that. We have universities on that. We have a theatre company, or a theatre, should I say, organization on there. We have charities on there, and so on. And so get your organization learning, okay? It's assessed. So you can't just go on there and just watch the video and say, oh, I've learned something. No, you have to pass an assessment in order to pass, okay? Or we can do the face-to-face stuff. Either way, get people educated. Like I said, it doesn't have to be with us. It'd be great if it was, but it doesn't have to be with us, okay? Just please, I'll just go over my call to actions one more time, actually. Be willing to accept that everybody has unconscious bias, including you, all right? Entertain the idea that racism might be happening on a wider scale than you think. And please, finally, two things. Get educated, okay? And the last one, create a racial safeguarding policy. That's it. I'm out.